All right, Bunasara, let's do this. You are my last reading from December from 2022. Crazy. Been trying to get all these done for so long. I started yours last night after doing another one, but I don't know. I just wasn't really feeling it. I mean, it was good, but I just was like, let's do this. Let's do this tomorrow. It's important. So, right away what I noticed, I mean, I just looked at your Jupiter, I realized it's conjunctile goal, which is like um, the best uh, planet you can have for anything to do with algol is Jupiter on it. Um, but I'll talk about that later, but it's very good for spirituality and creativity, especially, and like it's very magical. And it's in the second house, so it's the financial guardian angel is what I always call Jupiter's second house. But let's start basic. Sun, 7 degrees Cancer, right on the IC, 0 degree Chiron, um, in Cancer too. And obviously you've got that galactic center moon, just like Esme, who's come to me. So Sag moon, like myself, but it's right, yours is exact same as Esme's. And that, right in the galactic center, which is super interesting. You have, oh yeah, I was saying this yesterday because, like I said, it started yours, but I never I just was like, I didn't do it. But yeah, like it's just crazy the similarities between this one and the one I did yesterday. Because there's also a Sag moon and a Cancer sun. And also the Sag moon was squared by Saturn, and this one is conjunct Saturn. So, I guess to start off, Sun in Cancer, with Sag Moon, conjunct Saturn is going to give it kind of like a little flavor of Capricorn. Um, and Uranus is right there too, so it's going to give it a little flavor of Aquarius. But I mean, that's like one of the most like psychic, intuitive placements, to have Uranus conjunct Moon. And galactic center is just, it's a black hole, and when you have your moon there, you just are you can just be a channel for all types of cosmic, spiritual, mystical information. Like you'll feel very tied to it, and it will come very easy to you to understand these things. Um, it's the eighth house Pluto, always interesting, and it's domicile, so it's the ultimate battle in this lifetime of ego versus soul and that whole thing. So 12th house has some Pisces in it. North Node also conjunct Mars, which is interesting because when you look at it from a different perspective, like of like the Vedic astrology, it can be looked at differently. But overall, the nodal North Node in Pisces, um, it's really pushing you towards a spiritual, um, towards yeah, because your Aries rising, so it's like about kind of a karmic tendency. It squares Mercury, yeah. So there's like a karmic tendency of being a little bit stuck in the consensus realities, I'll call it, right? A little bit stuck in the different self-limiting thoughts that you might have about yourself and about reality just in general. And so in this lifetime, when you go from Virgo to Pisces, you're going from like the intent, like the real in your Black Moon Lilith is also in Virgo. So I always tell people, like, there's always like a million reasons why we can be disappointed, each day, right? There's always a million reasons why we can find something to get down about, right? To worry about. And each day that happens, right, it separates us from that oneness, right? From the real depth of spirituality, especially in this material world where there's this whole consensus reality where things don't really add up, and you have to really look into your intuition, look inside yourself, find the wisdom, right? As a Sag moon, ninth house, go out, with Saturn there, it's actually a good placement um, for someone who just really needs, has that real, can take like a very serious approach to spirituality, which in itself is about finding truth, right? And I know you're growing up in Romania. It's very religious country, very traditional. Um, and having Uranus in the ninth would make you have kind of like a, how you say, like a rebellious attitude when it comes to your beliefs, and not just believing like, okay, I'm just gonna go and it's not like an anti. I mean, it can be like kind of anti-established religion, but it's more, I think of it more like, thinking for yourself, um, and not just being. And with the moon there, there's a need to kind of travel, and whether it's traveling physically or traveling metaphorically, um, and to just expand, right? To just expand. So it's interesting. And with that nodal axis I was talking about, there can, you have to watch out for, like, because as the Virgo South node, like, you have to watch out for a tendency to be um too obsessed with like spiritual practices and spirituality, like that's one thing that I was learning about today. Um and overall though, with Mars there, it can, yeah, there's just like a major push in that area of life, which is very esoteric, very occult, very about being of service in your life, right? So you asked about work. Well, I mean, you have Neptune on the midheaven, and then you have and then Neptune rules your north node in Pisces. So it's right. So whenever I see people with Neptune on the midheaven, usually like they're meant to be healers of some sort, or at least people who, sometimes there's even like some kind of sacrifice that they feel like they have to make for their career. Um, Here comes your moon twin, this famous astrologer, which is her new Instagram. She took my old one, my at Esme Cat Astrology. She's got some good content. She made one video yesterday, but she comes during special times. So Esme, do the thing you do every reading. Tell me, look at a point in the chart and tell me what you need to focus on. Esme, look. Do your thing. No, she's not doing it. It's weird. Esme, look. Which thing? Look. She's the one to do it. Esme, I don't pay you enough. Okay. Well, anyways, so yeah, there can be like a tendency. So figuring out the Virgo Pisces nodal axis is really important. Because like the real balance between that, it's both are very service oriented. But you don't want to be like, you're here to become more spiritual, and your work should reflect that. But um at the same time, midheaven's in Capricorn, right? So it's like being able to mix compassion, but also something that really gives you like a feeling. I mean, I could definitely, if you were like a doctor or something, I wouldn't be surprised. Um, but yeah, the Neptune on the midheaven also like could just speak to, if if you because I'm seeing like spiritual mystical talents just already as in, look, try again. Look, tell me what you see. Oh, she looked at the North Node in Pisces. I saw it there. So, yeah, like really like, Pisces, eighth, 12th house, it really is with your Mars. So there's that spiritual push, right? There's that push towards spirit, towards mysticism and all these things. And then you have that Pluto in the eighth, which is really, like I was saying before, that ultimate battle of like soul versus ego. And that will be like tested a lot. And just the ability to really go deep inside yourself. Having like Moon in Sag, you want to expand, you want to grow, you're very optimistic, you have an emotional need in relationships for freedom, and for growing with the part with a partner. But having Saturn on the Moon with Uranus could speak to whether it's usually the mother having had an interesting impact on you. I mean, Saturn would be kind of restricting that desire you have to fly, where maybe you felt like you kind of had to separate from there, from where you grew up. And then with Uranus, it can make someone very like very psychic, very able to just receive downloads, and it's an interesting placement. And it also implies that the mother, could have been a little bit distant, or just, other areas. Potentials are that um the nurturing itself had a level of like it wasn't like super super normal, like everyone else. um but then, yeah, there's this real mix of like Saturn, which is the authority, which is like, you know like things how they are, right? How they're supposed to be. And then Uranus, which is the great liberator. So to have those both on your moon, it's very interesting. And then the moon's in Sag, so it would definitely favor the Uranus more. But both could kind of play out in their own ways, right? Like for example, you could have like moon, like the Saturn could show as like a strict upbringing, while the Uranus could show as, yeah, it was strict, but then there's still a lot of open-mindedness or a lot of opportunity for you becoming an individual and not feeling judged or held back, because it's not a square or anything, right? But there'll be a big like, and then it also speaks emotionally to this part, the Sag moon. Like I said, there's a need for emotional growth, a need or for growing, for creating meaning out of your experiences. And then also for like there's this, it's very optimistic, like Sag moon. Sometimes you have to actually, like Sag moons have to, we have to look at ourselves and be honest and be like, like let's say something traumatic happens, right? um a Sag moon would be, or like a mini trauma or something bad, like a Sag moon would be this moon sign that could look at that and be like, okay, like instead of necessarily feeling the emotion, um they can run away from it and just create meaning out of it. Not really run away, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, there's times where things just suck, and you're meant to feel the impact of that that then helps you grow for future decisions. And I've seen that with myself and with other Sag moons, that sometimes this shit happens. Of course, you're a Cancer, so you're very emotional, right? And very attached to the family life and all that. But shit happens, and um it just goes straight. You know, it's almost like there's a skip step where it goes straight to making meaning, and oh, this happened, this was meant, which is great, you know. And that's actually one of the best things. I was watching this amazing video I posted in my story, about how, you know, when you're able to create spiritual meaning, or find the spiritual meaning, you know, that's just like massive. But still, sometimes there's a need to feel the difficult things. And with the opposition Chiron and Moon, you know, you could be meant to be a healer, of course, but also that just speaks of emotional pain, right? And face. So then with, you know, there's lots going on with the moon, because it's also opposite Mercury, and that can make one struggle with decision making. And you have Mercury retrograde just like my last person did, which is absolutely insane. So it's like that, not being sure whether to follow feelings or thoughts, right? Heart or head. And there can be like lots of like self-doubt. So there's a real need to like find the balance between those two. But you know, it's a Mercury retrograde natal, means so it actually shows because it's Mercury square your nose. So it's like in a past life you either had like a there, and you've carried on like something in your way of thinking, something or some things, whether it's like a mental pattern, right? Like self-limiting beliefs, um, that 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 limit you, um, limit your potential. And Saturn on the moon can have that effect too. And then after the Saturn return, it gets a lot better. Because the Saturn moon, it wants to fly, it wants to expand, right? But then Saturn can have that kind of, it can kind of hold one back. But then Uranus is also there. So Uranus is like, you know, I need to be different. I want to be myself. Saturn's like, but you also want to be, you know, able to fit in. And then Uranus is like, yeah, but it's kind of this back and forth game, right? So there's a big balance needed there. Oh wait, I was tripping. I meant to say you have Venus retrograde, not Mercury, which is different. So yeah, it's very rare to have Venus retrograde natally. But even that, you have Venus square the nodes too. So you know that can speak to, like, there's a real need for you in this lifetime. That's why your North Node is in the 12th house in Pisces, to go deep within yourself, through, you know, whatever you define as spirituality, and finding truth as a Sag moon, right? Um, and find yourself, you know, as a part of the greater whole, you know. So yeah, really trying to find like unconditional love, compassion, faith, all that stuff. Because like with the South Node in Virgo, there can be like this tendency to be very rigid, you know, and it shows with these squares to the nodes, try to skip steps, which can speak to, yeah, just like where's that book? I'm gonna read what it says about the Mercury one. But yeah, it says, okay, when Mercury squares the moon's nodes, we are alerted at the possibility of unresolved issues in the mental life of the individual. This can include overly rigid thinking or excessively restless curiosity that lacks discrimination as to the kind of material the mind is taking on board. This may represent an issue with internalized messages, like, you know, the messages you're telling yourself, but it could be very unconscious, or introjects of a very critical nature that undermine the strength of the personality. So it could come from, you know, childhood, from parents, all that stuff. And it can just feel like there's like, you know, voices, not actual voices, but like, yeah, like kind of like, you know, like metaphoric voices that are kind of limiting you in ways, right? So such internalized guilt emphasized here can become the basis for internal shame and or masochistic tendencies. This placement may indicate a range of communication issues. For example, an issue with trusting the opinions of others, lies, or conflicting views as to the nature of the truth may have had profound consequences in prior life. So yeah, I mean, and it's in it, it's in Gemini, which is the exalted placement for Mercury, so that'll make you very smart in the third house, especially. Um, and it's square Mars, but it doesn't really have like any like insanely crazy aspects. Well, square Mars, it does form a T square with Moon and Mars, right? So it's like the Moon, Mercury, Mars, and it shoots out in Virgo. So what that's trying to say is that like so the Moon, Mercury we talked about, and then there's Mercury, Mars, and so the Moon square Mars basically it can make someone kind of quick tempered, just like triggered easily, right? Like they can just kind of snap, people who have this, and it can lead to like relationship problems. But they really need to like learn self-control and like where to channel their energy, right? And that's then yeah, you'll see in a sec. It's a T square is like a bow and arrow, so it's like it shoots out in one place, and the Mars is here in Pisces, which can be Mars in Pisces can be a little bit passive aggressive, right? It's not definitely that. It can just lack the ability to it can be frustrated in the 12th especially, and it can also it can be a little bit self-sabotaging, you could say. I've seen Mars in 12th house like where it's like until you really realize that worth and realize um you know realize basically I deserve this, right? um there can be a tendency, and a lot of that comes from developing that spiritual relationship with yourself. And Mars rules your whole chart because you're in Aries rising, so it takes on extra importance. um but the square with Mars and Mercury, that one's more about just how that same energy can come like this kind of very very like quick. So there's a real need to balance the self, and that's where Virgo comes in, right? Because that makes one have like difficulty with concentrating, lots of thoughts and ideas, very talkative, and it's very easy to kind of like lose the essence of the conversation, and sometimes just it can be difficult. So it shoots out in Virgo, which is a sign when used well, right, of routine, um, balance, um, groundedness, having things in your daily life that whether it's like the gym, journaling, whatever it is, for the spiritual, the emotional, the physical, the everything all, and that's what's really like and figuring out what that, even diet, everything kind of comes together, and that's ultimately what, how you kind of find what works for you, um and how you can then think, okay, well, that's pushing me to my south node, um and that is an area of past life expertise. Now Black and Lilith being there too, it could speak to how there can be sort of a perfectionist tendency, and being once again being too hard on yourself, right? So there's a big need to, like, I always say, treat yourself how you treat a best friend, you know that's really important. And know that if if every day has a score of 0 to 100, it's not each day you're gonna be able to get 100, and it's about being able to get back on the horse, metaphorically, when you do fall short of certain things. um And also Black Moon Lilith in Virgo can be very critical of other people. So that's important to not be like projecting. Um, and yeah, so the high energy of Virgo, like I said, is being of service still, but not being overly perfectionist, understanding your shortcomings, understanding that others have shortcomings, and just working with that energy. But yeah, past life tendency would be to be, ruled by Mercury, would be to be a little bit caught in the material world and not really enough in the spiritual world and the inner world, a little bit too much caught in like the work life, right? Sixth house work, everyday life, and losing sight of like the 12th house, which is like the collective unconscious and kind of the soul evolving and really, so that's as a Sag moon, galactic center, you're able to really grasp this, what I'm saying, and feel with the Uranus on the moon, you're able to really feel this energy. And having Saturn in the ninth, a lot of astrologers have that. It's no surprise because it gives a serious, so it can restrict traveling. So now you're past your Saturn return, but it could have restricted you from traveling until then. But there can be like a more serious approach to um, matters of the ninth house. Finding, which is to me, it's about finding truth, right? You can call it religion, spirituality, whatever, but it's about finding ultimate truth and the truth that you're going to live your life based off of, which then goes, to your 10th house, which has midheaven and Neptune, same degree, right? Which is just like, yeah, like I just know that some people who had that, where I talk to them and they tell me like, it almost feels like I had no choice but to, have a career in something spiritual or something where I'm really helping people, like psychology, for example, right? Especially with the eighth house Pluto, just like a master psychologist. Um and yeah, and then that helps you kind of connect with the North Node in Pisces, because through diving deep into the psyche of other people, you're understanding yourself better. Now, being a Cancer, right? Right on the IC, your childhood, super important, and with Chiron there, there's definitely like some wounding around your family, right? Um, it opposes your moon. It's conjunct your sun, so it would most likely be related to both parents. Um, and it's a big part of your chart, and Chiron is the wounded healer, so it's like the healing you have to go through is ultimately what makes you great, right? Or what make the healing you have to go through for yourself is ultimately what makes you great at being a healer for other people. Um, so yeah, but I think that like I think it's like this the conjunction with Moon and Saturn can also make you quite shy, and there can be like a lack of self-confidence growing up, especially. So yeah, usually like there's not the most warm parents where the emotional needs weren't met, right? Um, but like the whole thing is working on your self-esteem and your maturity, and you become very able to meet your needs as a grown-up. And with Uranus, like I said, like it's just very unconventional, and there's that emotional need for excitement, for change, um, and just very nonconformist. And also, I was gonna say, so I have this open. You have Venus square your nodes too. So, because when Venus squares the moon's nodes, we're looking at unresolved karmic material pertaining to how a person relates to themselves and therefore the way they relate to others. So it can be from extremes of isolation to excessive social activity that leads to a loss of identity through exhaustion. See, that's kind of what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is like there's like a tendency to, because there hasn't been enough of like a spiritual push, which is basically just what I define spiritual as, just like internal self dialogue, really, really like getting to know, really, really asking the big questions and getting deep, right? Um, it's pushed you away from your your authentic identity a little bit, right? This placement can indicate an issue with projected meaning or not seeing the true reality of others due to our transference onto them. We might transfer unresolved issues onto our partners and friends, co-opting them to play roles in our own inner drama. This can also refer to a life-threatening situation whereby the self has become highly anxious, causing a great difficulty in relating to its own needs. It can indicate a situation whereby the person needs to learn to be alone, to love and accept themselves before being able to meet others on equal footing. And that is very interesting. So yeah, it's like there's these message, there's these messages they're unconscious that that you tell yourself that keep you away from the full kind of experience. I'm looking for something here. But yeah, like having Venus retrograde can make it difficult. Like it's only like what, like 7 or 8% of people or something like that. Yeah, like difficulty in kind of expressing, like freely expressing love and affection. There can be kind of a coldness. Um, and it can actually create that energy that I just read, where it's like what people with that can look at their life, and it can kind of be like the "how are you doing" question can kind of be answered by how you're how well you are doing in like the relationship area of life, right? And it can make emotional relationships difficult, because there can be like a lot of like internalization and even like exaggeration of hurts. So yeah, there's definitely painful past life relationship memories, and maybe like a misunderstanding about the actual nature of love. Um, and what can happen in the current life is that pain still lingers, and there can be a tendency to kind of cut yourself off in some way, whether it's conscious or not, from fully experiencing the true love, because there's this fear of being hurt. Um, so lots of healing needed there, because there can be that tendency, to block yourself from that happiness. Um, but it really is good, important to see yourself as that individual, not as that individual in the eyes of that others expect, that others' expectations, but really in your own eyes. And that's why the North Node, where it is so key, because it's like, and Ceres is also there at 29 degrees of Pisces, last degree of the zodiac. So it's like, it's through it's through that oneness of that feeling of oneness with the world. That's you love that experience, you crave that experience, right? um and you want to be a healer, you want to take people away from their pain. It makes you super compassionate, right? And Mars also in Pisces has that kind of that strong drive for a spiritual path, right? And very, very, very intuitive too. Um, the thing though with that though, you have to watch out for having kind of like victim tendencies. That's something I see with the Mars there. But you know, it's conjunct the North Node, so um, you really have to watch out for being too materialistic. I'm not saying you are. You just have to watch out for that potential of that, like that hungry ghost potential, where because the things won't satisfy you. People work their whole life for money, then they get money and they get depressed, and they're like, because they realize that like there's, after a few years of being, I don't care how rich you are, um, yeah, it makes life better, but suddenly the thing that you used to, let's say used to let's say that like I don't know, a meal that let's say like a a, a 20 euro meal was like something that was like awesome or whatever. I don't know. And now it gets replaced by like a 100 euro meal. But like after a while, you get used to it. You used to drive if you used to drive like you know, a 8,000 euro car, and then it gets replaced by a 200,000 euro car. It's like after a few years, it's just the same shit. It's a car. Yeah, it's better. It looks better. It feels cool. Whatever. But you get used to it, and it's like that book I have somewhere next to me, right there, titled "Wherever You Go, There You Are." Really good book. But anyways, yeah. So there's definitely lots of potency in this chart. The sun opposite Neptune is interesting because it's like Neptune's on the midheaven, and um the sun's on the IC. So sometimes with this, there can be like a feeling like we're like allowing people to tell you how to live your life, um, because of a lot of times because of like a lack of self-confidence. It's just a potential, right? Um, and it can kind of create like an issue with boundaries, and like a very pleasing nature. Um, so it's really all great for being artistic too. But it's really important to like use that very sensitive nature um to benefit other people but not lose yourself. So that's why spending time alone for you is really important, and being a Cancer rules the home. It makes it even more important, and the fact that it is on the IC, and there's that opposition. I mean, the way I see that is that there could be the childhood was a very important time for you, and able to fully maximize your career, you have to really go back into childhood and heal that Chiron pain. And that Chiron and Cancer pain, once healed, can show skills as like a very gifted healer, right? Very gifted healer, very gifted you know, uh, someone who can work with emotions and with that type of energy in a really amazing way. Um, but yeah, there can definitely be like an inferiority complex with the Neptune opposition, um, insecurities, and you have to just like with the Mars Pisces, the like if you feel threatened, that you can use like kind of a more underhand tactics, to kind of avoid like the ego battles, like deception, just underhanded tactics like that. So that's one thing to make sure. But also it's an opposition, so you have to really watch out for like frauds, like people who are kind of like liars and people like that who enter your life. So it really is about increasing your intuition, which goes with the whole spiritual journey. Um, so yeah, it's really important to be very, very upfront, you know, and Mercury in Gemini, you're given that placement this lifetime, and it's a great placement to be able, to be a great communicator and to be a great thinker and to actually be able to speak and to really have a great um, way with your words, right? Um, but yeah, with the Neptune, there can definitely be like Neptune Sun aspects. I just think of the word like um, identity crisis, right? And it can come, could have been something in the past. These are all meant to be overcome. And this one is really pushing you into your spiritual gifts, creative/spiritual gifts, right? Because compassion, idealism, all these things are that's where you're really strong, and intuition. So there's lots of politicians that have this type of thing. People who work for like, who do things like fashion, or even like humanitarian stuff. But yeah, it's a really interesting one. And it can also make someone very, very suspicious naturally, as a kind of like, healthfully, kind of as a defense mechanism against being taken advantage of, as I mentioned before. But a lot of people who have this, like, they start off by being over, like, they can like very easily over idealize others, um, and kind of when it comes to love, like, let people in that shouldn't be let in, and see them just for their potential instead of the reality, and not see the red flags when they come up. Um, but yeah, also when it comes to like mind altering substances, you have to definitely take like extra precautions, because yeah, Neptune can be about poisoning, so that's important. Um, and yeah, when you, because like it can bring like kind of depressive times in your life. That's important to not rely on anything chemical, and to just get through them and just feel the energy, journal, whatever you need to do. And the fact that it's on your midheaven, it rules your north node. It's like really, really based, your career is this would really, if you were a psychologist or something of that nature, it would really make so much sense, because um in the follow we can talk about different potentials, because I know you said in the messages that it's you don't really want to know about vocation, but even like a Cancer could be great at real estate, or like anything involving making people feel comfortable, right? The home. And so yeah. And like I think also, like, I don't know if you have kids, but um, you know, fourth house, like I see Cancer Sun, it would make family, home life really important for you. In a big way, a big part of your life, and a big vehicle through which you learn about life, right? Um, so that's important you know if you're married or have kids or whatever. And also it just relates to, like, your family of origin, your parents and whatnot, and just like, whether you love them or or hate them, like, you can't seem to avoid them. They're huge. There's lots of attachment there, lots of, it really points to you being the one in your family that's here to break this, like, some type of like generational trend that's just not good. And it's not that they're bad people, it's just that you see things that they probably don't see. So yeah, definitely, like with the sun, the fourth house, like people with that, there's definitely that attachment usually to the original family members, but they also have this real strong urge to, like, have their own, set of home base. And yeah, they really have to feel like their home base is like a real place that you can just love, that you're just like that's your spot, meets all your needs. Nicotine, my one vice. um Cancer, I mean, I don't really need to go into what it means, Cancer. It's just the thing with Cancer and Sag is that it's kind of like similar to what I have, like Sag, Pisces. It's that there's and yeah, you have, and yeah, you're fire rising like me, so we have the big three very similar. um the Sag wants to fly. The fire, the Aries rising, you want to go, 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 right? Very active. But but then there's that Cancer part that's very sensitive, and then you have air, like I do. Yes, you have all the elements besides Earth, right? Yeah, Jupiter in Taurus, I guess, because you gives you some Earth. But yeah, um, so that's really important. To know, or what's really important to know is that there's, there's I always think of it like this. I think of it like it's two different mouths that you have to feed in yourself, and one of them is very emotional, right? Very yeah, very emotional, very can be hurt easily, more of a homebody. And the other one is the opposite. Like Sag and Cancer can be further away from each other, right? Um, so it's like being able to feed both. It's like, you might be really attached to your home, to your family, but then the Sag part, not every Sag moon needs to travel the world their whole life. I mean, yeah, they do have that kind of emotional desire or even need to travel, but I always say traveling can be done. It's the philosopher, right? It's the philosopher. So the natural philosopher. So I think that I always say you can travel physically or metaphorically. Um, so let's see 1 second. I'm gonna pause remote to the rest. Okay, I am back with my eyes that are still red. They look really red. Go you closer. It's like we just started allergies because I slept so much last 2 days. Anyways, yeah. So overall, just everything, you know, typically like a second house, like I was saying, like okay, actually let's not go there yet. So yeah, there's a big need for for independence. I see you have, well, actually, no. So it's an Aries rising, right? There's that 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 real independent force that you are, right? You want to do things on your own. You want to go, 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 go. It makes Libra rule your seventh, right? With Venus retrograde and the vertex there. So there's a lot of fate that plays out in your relationships. But it's important to not, like I was saying with the Venus, right? Because it's in, it's conjunct Mercury, it's in Gemini. And Venus and Gemini, sometimes they can get a little bit bored a little bit too easily. And it's an aspect besides that one conjunction. Excuse me, that I'm gonna stand up for a second, but you can still hear me. So what can happen is, as I was saying earlier, there can be like a potential for like being too obsessed with with the love life and how things are going there, and it can really become like there's I think I was reading, there's like a need for some people who have placements like this to really be single, to really be happy on their own, so that they can really go deep, because Venus, the misunderstanding people have with Venus is as metaphoric for the misrepresentation that people have with love itself. Like love is not love is an energy, right? It's something you can only feel within yourself, and when you feel it within yourself, that's the only time that you can then see it in a partner, right? And when you don't have the self love, I'm not saying you don't, by the way, but with these squares and nodes, there can be that tendency to kind of have these thoughts. So I would ask you to write down your self-limiting beliefs. I'm gonna say here, really get deep with that, But an aspected Venus, besides the conjunction with Mercury, it's another indicator of someone who you know love, self-love and love, there was something that was kind of misused karmically. Perhaps it was relied upon too much, like relationships were relied upon too much in the karmic past to give yourself definition, to give yourself identity. And in this life, it's not about not having relationships, it's about having that very firm relationship with yourself. And Venus in Gemini just on its own can get bored quite easily, right? An aspect that it can just, it's just obviously it can be very, very artistic too, right? A Venus retrograde, super a need for a creative outlet with Vesta and in Leo in the fifth. you can be very hardworking when it comes to creativity. Also, like yeah, there can be like lots of focus on creative projects that can literally like actually like turn into your work. And also it speaks about being very dedicated to children. Um, and you'll prefer to like work on your own, more entrepreneurial, right? Um, or you at least you'll work most creatively when you're kind of left to your own devices, right? Um, and take like a lot of pride in your work. And kind of like there's like that link of like play, inner child, and work, right? So when I see that, I'm like, that's someone who can like turn kind of like me, what I'm passionate about, astrology, into my work, right? So everyone has their own version of that. But I can definitely see that in your chart. And then with Neptune on midheaven, I'm like, all right, compassion and kind of that thing I was talking about, that oneness, that high spirituality, that Sag moon also really, really wants in a different way, right? Because your chart, you have similar energy to me, where it's like there's that need to keep I don't even want these, to keep growing, and things can, when things feel stagnant, you know you just it's just like on to the next chapter. So with Venus and Gemini, I have Venus in Aquarius, so it's also similar. It's air sign, so it's like the Venus and Gemini is infamous for being like the Venus sign where it's like sometimes they're just very curious, and it makes one love reading, love anything to do with writing, reading, even like doing things with your hands, like if you play guitar, like I don't know, video games, just like anything with the hands, right? Um, it really helps when you have Gemini placements to have something that you can do with your hands, because there can be like nervous energy, but there can also be great healing power in the hands. So it could be like, you know, Reiki or something like that could be something that could be very powerful. Um, whether it's, just something that you do is kind of like I don't want to say hobby, but, something you do is like, just out of interest, curiosity. Um, or, you know, and it's a chart of someone who I could see having like the thing they do for money, and then the thing that their passion, and then eventually the passion takes over, right? But with Jupiter in the second, oftentimes, nearly always, the person, it's almost like there's like a financial guardian angel, and it's like they've learned a lot of the lessons around money in past lives. Although the square of Venus and the nodes could also point to like, having too much of an obsession, especially in Virgo, with that, right? And worries around that. But Jupiter in the second, yeah, I always call it the financial guardian angel, because I've talked to so many clients who have that. I tell them the same thing. I'm like, so you have, the classic example I give is like you lose your job, and then 2 weeks later, a friend messages you and says, "Hey, like my company's hiring, and whatever, blah blah blah, or this opportunity, whatever it is," and it ends up being like way better in every way, or you get fortunate with marriage or the family you come from, things like that, right? Where it's like, for whatever reason, because second house rules like income. Um, Jupiter there is really, really good for when you're headed towards your north node, towards your like higher purpose, which in your case is very spiritual. Um, that spirit will really, really, really take care of you and make sure that your needs are met. And with the axis of Virgo and Pisces, the Virgo can sometimes worry, things aren't going to work out. This isn't going to work out. But Pisces is saying, take that leap into just endless possibilities, basically, right? And having Algol, Jupiter Algol, it's the best, like I said, best placement for Algol, because it gives amazing creative talent, right? Super good for art, music, and people can literally make a living out of something that has to do with the arts. I know it's not easy in Romania, but like Picasso had that. You know, a lot of people have had that. And it's good for all kinds of things, politics, whatever, you know. So it definitely is a strong placement. Now, Jupiter is about to enter Taurus too. So you're about to be feeling like obviously it's like literally at 29 degrees Aries right now, but you know when it enters Taurus, I'm not sure what day, in a few days. Esme, what are you doing? You know, that's big time, and that's gonna be a really feel good time for you. And besides that, you know, it just went over your ascendant, so it's like um probably a time where you're feeling lots of opportunities and lots of growth and lots of expansion and confidence and good things happening, especially um having Saturn on your moon and having, you know, your Saturn return, you know, happened years ago, but still, um yeah. So, but the thing with Jupiter and Taurus also is that Jupiter makes everything bigger. So you have to watch out for being overly materialistic, like I said before, like because there's this strong desire for abundance. So you have to make sure that there's like the balance between. I'm not saying, you know, like be like don't care about money at all. No, like Jupiter and Taurus people are meant to, you know, like they, you know, second house, that's a great placement for money. But also, you know, Taurus is about like the senses, and it can make someone sometimes you have to watch out for being like a little bit like hedonistic, right? In the sense of you know, stop, Esmond, bad girl, don't scratch. Ah, Esmond, why did you make that so dramatic? You just scratched the shit out of me, Esmond. Why did you do that? Okay, she rolled on her stomach. Okay, sorry, bad girl. She just did this such a cancer. She's actually Esmond has the same chart as you. It's really funny. She's also a Cancer Sun, Sag Moon. Um, but she did a very dramatic thing, right? Put her on the ground. She like fell or made it look like I don't know, funny cat. But yeah, so yeah, really like the self-limiting beliefs, you know. And I think with the Sag Moon, it's like being able to see that you know that everything is possible. So um, yeah, one second. Okay, so I had to end one recording, so I'll mash them together in my editing program. But this is like took a little break. I do that sometimes, but yeah, overall, it's just like share screen. Oh, so yeah, very like another aspect is you know just this ability to really think. You know, you have an exact trine of um Pallas and Mercury. So it's like this ability to use kind of the third eye, intuitive, strategic, thinking ahead, planning mind, um, with uh, you know, very inventive also. One second. To merge that with your everyday Mercury brain, right? Of course, you know, Mercury in Gemini, it's very strong, very strong. um, but yeah, you just have to. It's one of those things where it's like a Ferrari, and you just have to learn how to you know, or it's like a you know, what are they called? Like a chariot with like a bunch of horses, you know, and you have to learn how to ride it, but then it's super fast or something like that. I don't know. Well, yeah, learning to tame it. But yeah, overall, I mean, like, Pluto trining the sun, just very, incredible regenerative powers, right? With the eighth house Pluto, there's, this really big need to go, deep into, like I said, like deep into your own personal shadow. And it's the natural place for Pluto. So, um, it just makes one, it's like, yeah, I think I said earlier, like natural psychologist, like energy where you're just really able to probe deep. And of course, in Placidus, it would be a seventh house Pluto, which would, speak more to um, just how you could find, within your relationships, um, which I already said that with the vertex, but in a different way. But it's in your romantic relationships that you might meet some of your shadow. Um, and there's also like a part about like sacred sexuality and just really kind of, yeah, the like that would probably be a need in relationships, for a deeper type of sexual experience than some signs. But then having Venus in Gemini, um Venus isn't sex, but yeah, like sometimes, like I was saying earlier, Venus in Gemini, sometimes it's doesn't give enough time for things to work out. It can be too fast on to the next one. But with me saying that, like I know, like my my dad has Venus in Gemini, and I think, and I know a lot of married people who have it, so it's not like there's a Venus placement where it's like, oh, you cannot, you'll never have relationships, right? That's not what it is. It's just that, like I say this sometimes to people who have this, where it's like, um, you can have like a Venus and Gemini can be very flirtatious, and sometimes they won't even notice that they're doing it because they're just so curious about someone, and it can come off in a way that's like romantic, but it like isn't. It's a funny thing. Um, so yeah, and then your Juno is also in Gemini, right? So Juno is really, I've always looked at Juno as um, an asteroid of marriage, of higher commitments. Some astrologers say, look at Jupiter for, your ideal partner. I haven't found that to be true in the way I do things, but I do see that you have a lot of trines to your descendant also, which is interesting. Is Jupiter. You have Mercury and Venus. Yeah, so Venus trine descendant is really, really good for love. And so there definitely is like a very intellectual, airy, communication is very, very important in relationships. And just there's that balance, that Aries Libra axis is activated here, right? Because as I'm saying, like in past, the past life karmic tendency, you're trying to break through these self-limiting beliefs and the piece about self-love and just relationship patterns. But a lot of that, so people who have like a Venus retrograde, it's it tends to push them in a direction when they're growing up where relationships are, I don't want to say more frustrating, but they're meant to go through this process of reevaluating um kind of what relationships mean to them. So then when they mature, they can enter into a really good one and undo a karmic tendency, you see? And it's like if you were just in relationships, and maybe, we'll talk about it in the follow-up, but if that's your experience and you never get to be alone, you never get to experience um, that single life that, people get in relationships and then they want to be single, and then people are single and they want to be in relationships. It's like, it's a human pattern. Wanting what you can't have, the grass is green on the other side. But really, at the end of the day, I think that having, Mika, Venus and Juno there, it's just speaking to like this playfulness and this need for like conversation or communication, intellectual stimulation, and third house also, right? So things would not work with someone that, you can't. It's a Sag moon, of course, too, right? Where you can't speak to them on both levels with the lower and the higher mind. The lower mind doesn't convey that Gemini is like lower than Sagittarius. It's more about using the metaphor of Gemini being like the journalist, um, and Sag being the philosopher that kind of takes all of the data, right? So you have both of those. And yeah, it's very creative too, as I said. So I think there's definitely a need to kind of yeah, there probably was. I mean, my assumption, I don't like to make guesses because it's very difficult, and astrology is ultimately, your chart meets free will. Um, but it wouldn't be uncommon for there to be, times of relationship and times of more kind of isolation where you're meant to kind of think about how you want to be in relationship. One second. So yeah, um, another thing about, relationships, like, or with that axis, is that, as Aries rising, and with the, obviously Libra seventh house and all the Venus stuff I've talked about, there is that I look at like the six axes in astrology as archetypes that we're all trying to balance. So the Aries Libra one is the balance between independence, right? Like being your own person, not depending on someone else to make you happy, being, like kind of just like a conqueror, pioneer, and just being completely in your, it's just like, yeah, like I don't want to say in your ego, but just um not needing someone else to feel like yourself, right? And then you have Eris rising too. Wow, I didn't see that. So that just, Eris is like a very volcanic asteroid. And so I think that this can definitely benefit you. I mean, I could see this being the chart of, even with the Mars in the 12th in Pisces, like of like athletic potentially, but like there's definitely this major firepower that you have. And with all those, Mars making those squares to Moon and Mercury, there's that need to, like I was saying earlier, to ground that energy. So Eris just adds to that as another indicator of, as an Aries rising, which is Pisces and Aries are the two most rare rising signs. You're born at 115. So it's just important to really lean into your South Node in Virgo in the positive way and turn that Black Moon Lilith in Virgo into high energy of Virgo, because that is really, really about groundedness and routine. And I'll repeat it, it's just so important for you. Time alone also very important, for a North Node in the 12th. But like, remember, everything is about balance. So it's not like just become a monk per se, but being able to balance that is very important. But as I was saying, like with Aries and Libra, the extreme would be like complete codependency, right? While Aries, the extreme would be like, I don't give a shit about anyone. Like I'm doing me, like this is it, not compromising at all. Just, yeah. So it's important to have that balance for sure. Now, I'll go back on my camera. So also like Chiron in the 4th, which would be third, in classes, but like, I imagine like with what the other, all the energy that I'm seeing, that there could have been a sense of feeling like rejected for your philosophies and your way of seeing the world, and maybe just not resonating as much with where you came from. Like, not to say that you wouldn't love where you came from, but just being more forward thinking. And yeah, I think that either way you look at it, it's like in Cancer, there's like that rejection from the family in some type of way, or just feeling unsure of yourself in your own family. It could be like just really not seeing eye to eye with whether it's a father, mother, just in general, right? But it could also be that, yeah, you felt like your voice couldn't be heard, right? You felt like your voice couldn't, like you couldn't truly speak your voice. And I think that is a huge thing for you in this life, is it's finding that authentic voice, right? Finding that authentic voice where you're not afraid to kind of speak up about the things that you really find interesting, that you think are real. And just I see that also with the part of fortune being close to Pluto, and in the 8th, because basically, like, there's just this powerful drive towards like anything metaphysical, anything spiritual, towards like that, towards the inside, not the outside. That's kind of what this nodal axis of Virgo and Pisces is about. It's towards the infinite. So, and the Pluto is toward within yourself. So part of fortune is basically it's a hypothetical point on your chart that refers to, it's kind of like your flow state. Like it's like a benefic place in your chart, and it happens to fall at 0 degrees Scorpio, so 8th house. And of course, once again, I'll tell you that in Placidus, the house system I do not use, but I allude to, it would speak to relationships being, an area, but the vertex is in the seventh and whole sign. So either way, you learn a ton. Your doorway to higher awareness is through relationships and through service, right? Service through your career or just in whatever way that makes sense to you. But Part of Fortune Scorpio is basically saying how regeneration, real spiritual growth, real transformation and courage and taking these risks is really where you feel fulfilled, and it's the same with the eighth house. So, it goes back to this Plutonian thing of surrendering the personal ego, soul versus ego, that's kind of a huge thing I'm seeing here. Unleashing the Sag moon is another huge thing, right? And it's so interesting that you're born when Saturn and Uranus were exactly conjunct in 88, and the moon was just right there too. And it's like they're so close to each other that it's 0.05. So it's not like there's like one that's like so much closer, barely closer, So yeah, I'm curious how those both play out. Because if you think of them as the moon in Sag is like Jupiter, it'd be like Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn. So the Saturn would get kind of pushed away over time and lead to like a very emotionally responsible person who can expand, but in a way that's more responsible, less, one of the shadows of Sag moon. It can be a little bit just, it can kind of take too many risks, right? But the Saturn there would probably push that more of that away. In some cases, it can make one really want to be seen well in the eyes of others. But then the Uranus says, screw that. I just want to be me. I just want to be an individual. So it's interesting, that combo. I haven't seen that one before. But let's see here. So yeah, also with Pallas in the 11th in Aquarius. Yeah, that's really good for being able to do work that benefits humanity. And being good at like working in groups. And yeah, like Pallas and Aquarius is just brilliant, very original, insightful, seeing things ahead of time, being ahead of your time, being inventive, looking at the future, and really fighting for causes you care about, right? And yeah, like Ceres and Pisces and then Sag moon, it's really just like yeah, just spiritual expansion and just like philosophical expansion are both so huge for your well-being. So yeah, I think the really important thing is to kind of get past your own ego, and part of the ego is the Mercury squared, and the Venus squared, the nodes, because those are what kind of get in the way of Pisces, right? Pisces is everything. It's the great never-ending ocean. While Virgo can South Node people sometimes can allow themselves to, yeah, to be a little bit too involved with work or a little bit too allowing like different worries to creep in sometimes. So yeah, it's important. And yeah, I can't stress enough like Neptune right on the midheaven. You asked about career and in Capricorn. I mean, Capricorn midheaven, it likes to be, have like a responsible, respectable career path. And something reliable, something that provides security. And usually there are some setbacks, like in the first 30 years or so, before Saturn return. But it gets way better with age. But then Neptune, on the midheaven, It could even be like something around water, like but really just like where you find you deepen your soul through your profession, where your imagination comes into play. Um, like where you can truly pursue your dream, your passion. That's Neptune, right? Um, so people who have that oftentimes, yeah, like I was saying earlier, like there's sometimes like a sacrifice where it's like they're like, I'm going to do this even if it maybe pays less than this other thing I could do. Um, but then the thing with that is that you know, it can make one not. I mean, the Capricorn helps a lot, but there's a need to earn income, to make things work. So there's also like that need to be realistic because sometimes Neptune can be a little bit overly idealistic. So yeah, it's really about kind of looking at things clearly. But really it comes down to being of service, finding a way to be of service. And yeah, and really find inspiration in your career, so that's kind of, and just trusting the universe once again because it's ruling your north node. So um if there is something in mind with the vocation that is coming to mind as I'm saying all this, Jupiter second house, Neptune midheaven, north node conjunct Mars in 12th house Pisces, it makes me think that the universe would support you um if you were even to like make a career change or take some great leap that had more that whatever is really touching your soul. And Sag moons, they want to be learning, they want to be inspired, they need to be inspired by what they're doing. So yeah, let's see this. Okay. Wow, so okay, so you have what my girlfriend has. So I don't really like to get it, like I don't really like to talk um so like sexual things that much, but like when it shows up, I just say it because I have a lot of experience with lust rising. Um, it can make people like of the opposite sex like almost like obsessed um in like a very like raw sexual way. And I think of like yeah, lust, on the ascendant. The ascendant's how you look, it's your personality. So it will add those the features. Lust is about, yeah, I don't know the word Romanian, but um, it's an erotic kind of energy that is put out, even if the person doesn't necessarily recognize it or think it. It kind of brings it up, like other people see the person that way, even if they're not, hyper sexual or anything. They can still be seen as being that. Um, and I mean, in my experience, I've seen it be like really intense. So yeah, like, yeah, it's just important to know. Um, let's see here, whether stars. Yeah, so even like your Mars like is on like a star that can be kind of like fighty, quarrelsome. So that's just like another indication of that with all the squares. Oh, and you have Aphrodite. Wow, okay. So you have lust and Aphrodite. So lust is like sexy, sexual. Aphrodite is like princess beauty. And you have that on your Jupiter, and you also have Algol on your Jupiter. So there's definitely like a major appeal to you. Like an aura that's very distinct. Um, it's really interesting to have both of those. 16, 18. Hmm. So Rigel is like a wealth star. It's between Mercury and Venus, but it's like kind of like in the middle of both. But let me see what orbs. Probably like 240. So it's a loose orbs, but it could be very good for like anything like scientific, like anything mercurial, writing, all that, communicating. Um, and Venus conjunct Rigel honors or favors in middle of the midlife, the middle of life, good and influential marriage, especially a female. So there you go. Okay, so now that. Okay, none there. Yeah, it's Psyche on Pluto. So that just makes you want to just it even adds to that need to just go deep into the human psyche, understand what makes you tick, what makes other people tick, you know. There's so much of that energy there of just wanting to really, that's why I think like being a psychologist, if you were that, if you are that, I'd be so happy. Or something like around that. Sorry, talk about the Galactic Center. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Eris, lust rising in Aries. Like, it's just like, wow. Right back. Okay, I lost connection for a second. It happens pretty much every reading because I have to have my freaking hotspot on because somehow my computer doesn't pick up on my the Wi-Fi that works fine with everything else. But yeah, those are the main influences. I talked about alcohol already. So yeah, a lot of themes. I've left you with a lot. So I want to just do one thing. Yeah, so just the whole high energy Virgo. Learn about what high vibe Virgo is. Organizing your life. Um, you know, that ultimately just seeing things clearly, not being perfectionist, having self-compassion, shooting for the stars, but not the understanding that like it is impossible to be perfect. Um, let's see. I knew it. So Moon and Uranus are both out of bounds. So basically, like, yeah, you can just be like so expansive, um, and so individualistic, um, that an out of balance planet, it's kind of has like free reign. It's like not really. It almost acts almost like an aspected one. So your moon in Uranus, even though, so it's like, imagine there's moon here and Saturn and Uranus right here. But then in terms of declination, moon and Uranus are super low and then Saturn's like here. So it actually does speak to, well, Saturn's at 22, so it's not like that, it's not so far away. But yeah, just like how the Uranus would probably prevail over the Saturn in that conjunction, and be more prominent. Just that need to individuate and be different, and so for relationships, it's just really another thing I always have to say is that you can't be in a relationship that is pushing you away from your North Node and from your biggest kind of karmic goals, right? So it's not to say that you have to be with someone who's deeply spiritual, but they should get, someone who respects and doesn't judge and gives space, right? Because like I said, with the Neptune opposition, you'll need some alone time to really cipher through, kind of like you have like the philosopher mind, so the philosopher comes to its, his or her greatest realizations alone, usually, even with with the Gemini placements. It's really good for being able to do that with other people, but there is also a need with that Sun opposite Neptune, because you can take on so much energy as a Cancer, as an empath, to be able to separate yourself from toxic people and from toxic environments, and to have the place where you work, the place you live with, all that very, very on point with your energy. So anyways, I'm going to connect these two videos, but what else can I say? I need to go take an allergy pill or something. My eyes are itchy. Yeah, just like a really interesting balance. But yeah, with the Cancer Sag thing, like I was saying, you just need to feed both mouths. And when I think of Cancer and Sag together, I think of like, being able to like expand within your own house, being able to, if you travel, to still feel that sense of comfort within yourself, right? And when you find that home within yourself, you can go anywhere and still be at home, you know? And that is literally like spirituality, meditating. That's another thing with the sixth house, with all the kind of Mars energy is in the Aries, is the need to really, to really ground. And it's, remember, I'm saying all this, like this could all have been things you've overcome. If they are, it's awesome, um let me see. And even Pluto is sextiling your midheaven, asking about career, right? So like that is significant because it's in the eighth house, and it would just, like in this case, it would speak to, yeah, a desire to Pluto, Neptune, midheaven, like to really, yeah, to probe deep, like research, or obviously I'm thinking about psychology, but like there's a million offshoots of that, right? Um, but you know, I would imagine you as someone that can be bored quite easily, that requires a way higher level of intellectual stimulation than the average, who needs to feel inspired, who wants to feel like what they're doing is leading not only to their growth, but also to like helping others, and to their spiritual journey, which can, it doesn't, it can look totally different from one person to the next. The need to avoid perfectionism, the need to look at the relationship stuff, and um, self-love stuff, the family stuff I talked about. So I think I've covered a lot. So where did it go? Oh yeah. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. And we shall be. I think you just got the reading, right? Right. Incorrect in saying that. No, and follow up. So yeah, so you can take your time with this, and then we can set a time to talk. All right. Ciao. Ciao, ciao, ciao. All right.